Welcome to Project Body Love with Women's Health in association with Philips. I'm Claire Sanderson, the Editor-in-Chief of Women's Health. Project Body Love is an initiative that Women's Health pioneered several years ago, and I'm thrilled that we're here sharing it with you today. It's a campaign that encourages women to embrace their healthy bodies and embrace their uniqueness and realise that well looks different on everybody. Today, I am joined by my very good friend, Alice Liveing. Alice is a personal trainer, she's an author, a podcast host, and a fitness influencer. Alice, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And how are you today?
Good, yeah, feeling very good. We were just talking about how I feel like I've been sleeping more, eating better, all as a result of the year that we've had. So I feel very good.
You do look glowing, I have to say.
Thank you.
I have not seen you for what must be 7 months, which is a shame because we used to see each other all the time. But
I know.
What a strange year we've had.
Yeah, and it has been weird. And I think, that's been one of the biggest shocks to the system is the lack of social connection. So even doing things like this is so lovely. To be able to sit and have a chat just feels really nice.
So we're here today to talk about Project Body Love, which you've actually been involved in since its infancy, haven't you? You were involved with the shareable slogan cards that we gave away in previous years in Women's Health. And it's a campaign that talks about body confidence and how it peaks and dips throughout life. And as a personal trainer, you come up close and personal with women of all ages. So what's your take on body confidence? And let's talk about your journey as well.
Yeah, so I think it's so great that you guys are doing Project Body Love, and I think definitely from its infancy to now, even seeing the transformation across the magazine of how you guys have really embraced it has been great. And I think, even the words body confidence and self-love and all these kind of things, those weren't words that I ever heard when I was growing up. They didn't even exist. So to hear mainstream magazines now talking about that sort of thing, showing a diverse range of bodies, talking about how we can accept our body at any size, at any age, I think is so positive and has definitely helped even myself on my own journey. And when I talk about body confidence and body acceptance, really I think I talk about it in a sense that it's never a finished journey. I don't ever believe that we get to a point in our lives where we go, oh my God, I've arrived and I feel great and I'm never going to have to feel rubbish again about the way I look. I don't believe that's a reality for a lot of people. What I believe in is that we are always on a journey of learning and adjusting to love what we have in the stage that we're at. So I'm 28 right now. I'm sure that my body's going to look very different in 20 years' time, and it will have to be a whole new conversation that I have with myself where I learn to love where I'm at that point. But even from now to when I was, a teenager, there have been changes that I've seen in my body. I'm definitely in a different body to the one that I had then. And looking in the mirror, it really is a conversation that you have to have internally where you're like, this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and changing myself or making myself smaller isn't probably going to make me happier. I need to learn to love what is there. And yes, okay, there can be things that I can do to optimize my health, like we just talked about, getting more sleep, walking, seeing friends, drinking more water, all the things that we know make us feel good. But in reality, underneath all of that has to be a level of, this is who I am, I accept who I am, and almost develop a sense of neutrality. I don't necessarily think that it's a reality for all of us to wake up and go every day, oh, I absolutely love myself today, because for a lot of people that's just not the case. But to almost feel neutral about the way you look, to be indifferent, and for that also not to dictate how your day goes. So, a lot of women will probably resonate with waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I'm having a rubbish day, I'm gonna have a bad day as a result of that. That's just a reality, and that's something that I hear from my clients on the gym floor, so that's definitely something that I know happens. I'm at a point now where I really try to talk myself out of that mindset, to not wake up and think the first thing I need to do is look in the mirror and go, oh, how do I look in the mirror this morning? It's like, oh, okay, I'm up, I'm gonna do something to make myself feel good, and how can I take the focus away from my body and more on who I am as a person and what I'm gonna do that day. So I think, it's great that you guys are championing this message. I think there's so much to come from the magazine and the project itself in terms of how it can really expand and help people. And I just think it's been something that I really feel has come at such a crucial time for women who are exposed to so much more than they ever were in terms of perfection on that we see online and everything. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant initiative.
So we've done lots of research around Project Body Love over several years, and what came back over and over again is how we are our own worst critic. You just mentioned it there, and it's when we look in the mirror and we attack ourselves, we speak far more negatively about ourselves and our appearance than we ever would to anyone else. I would never look at you and go, goodness, look at the size of your hips. You know, but I would about myself. And that we need to break that negative cycle, and we need to encourage women to be kinder to themselves.
And I think the first step is just acknowledging it. Even saying, I have this negative self-talk that goes into my head, because I'm like, you know what, Claire? I have that too. And it's really annoying, but it happens. And I was brought up in an environment where my mum was on a diet for the majority of my childhood. So that messaging subliminally was fed into me. So when I got to the age of 16 and I started to think, oh, my body's changing a little bit, my first thought was, oh, well, you know, my mum's on a diet all the time, so that's something that I then need to do. I really think that you're absolutely right. Stopping that internal dialogue of thinking that we're not good enough is really how we try and nip this stuff in the bud. It's not easy, and you know, it's not simply a case of being able to flick a switch and say, oh my God, I never think those thoughts again. But even just challenging those thoughts and that internal dialogue is a way that I really try and help myself. So I've worked on all this sort of stuff for a long time, and I think one of the things that I try and remind myself of is that I am not my thoughts, that whilst that dialogue can continue, challenging those thoughts is actually one of the best ways to just stop them dead. So, you know, why am I starting to have this negative self-talk? What is the deeper rooted meaning of why that stuff's coming up? So if I have a day where I can feel that negative body image creeping over me, chances are it's probably something else. Chances are it's probably I'm stressed about work. I might have had an altercation with Paddy. I might have had an awkward conversation with someone that I felt a bit uncomfortable with. And my way of channeling that feeling of stress is to go, oh, well, it's easier for me to project this onto my body and myself than to deal with the deep-rooted issue. And so I find that challenging that thought and thinking, well, why is this coming up? And questioning it is a way better, more productive way than just accepting that thought as fact. So you said something about, oh, you know, I've got big hips or whatever, rather than being like, well, yeah, that's true, and my brain's telling me the truth. Say, well, why is that thought coming up? And actually, do I have big hips? And do I need to worry about whether that's even the case? You know, can I just look at my day and say, does it matter whether I do or don't? What can I do positively to get myself out of that mindset? I mean, you and I have had lots of conversations around this, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying that I've definitely seen, you know, when we've worked on a client and trainer basis, there have been times where you've come in and really struggled, and times when I have as well. And I think one thing that is so important is just opening up that dialogue and talking about it, rather than kind of suppressing those feelings and thinking that you are the only person that feels that.
And just try and think of all the good your body does for you. So we are coming out of lockdown. It's been a very challenging time, and people's self-esteem, I think, is being challenged, isn't it, by the situations we found ourselves in. We were talking before this about there's been less occasions to get dressed up and put makeup on and wear a dress, which is wonderful for your self-esteem. You know? So if I'm having a day where I'm feeling low about my body, I then exercise, because I know that is a surefire way to make me feel proud of what my body can achieve. For instance, doing a rowing workout this morning, and out of the 1,500 people in that class, I came 67th. So, and the top 4.5%. So yes, I might have big legs, but they're strong legs. So, and I think, what do you do if you're having days? Is anything physical you do? Is it workout? Is it meditation?
Yeah, and I think absolutely exercise is one of those things that has made me feel so proud of my body. And you're right, that feeling of being strong, getting through a workout, not having to worry about, you know, what comes after it, just focusing on where you are in that training session is great. And definitely for my mental health, I think exercise has been one of those things that I've really lent on over the past year for sure. But I think that it's important to acknowledge that exercise isn't always the solution, and there are definitely other things that I do find are helpful. I think, as I said previously, the kind of questioning the thoughts is a really good way to kind of pick apart why you might be feeling that. But also, yeah, why do we have so much focus on our bodies? Like, why is it always, I think as women particularly, we're conditioned to believe that our worth solely lies in the way that we look. And there's so much importance put on that that it becomes so crucial to us to have to maintain an image of this perfection that doesn't really exist. So things that I think are really powerful is take the complete focus away from the body. Don't think about it. Like, distract yourself with cooking a nice meal, watching a great film, going out for a long walk and just trying to listen to a good podcast. Take the focus away from, I have to look a certain way. Yes, these thoughts will come, but they will also go if you allow them to. So distract yourself with other things. Like you said, exercise can be one of those things for you where you celebrate your body for how strong it is, for how incredible it is to get through a training session. But also, like, complete distraction can really help too, for me anyway. Maybe that's a mindfulness session, maybe that's going out for a walk, cooking a meal, watching a movie, whatever it is, taking the focus away from, oh God, my body is this, and just thinking, how can I take myself away from that place and focus on something else? Because 9 times out of 10, I'll come back to that thought and it will have passed an hour later.
So you have a broad church of clients, predominantly female clients you train. What challenges do you see in terms of body acceptance amongst those clients? Does it vary with age?
Yeah, I would say, I'd be lying if I said the majority of people didn't come to me who wanted to have fat loss as their main goal. But actually what I am finding really pleasing is that a lot more women are coming to me saying, I want to be stronger. They have more tangible goals. I want to be able to do a deadlift properly. I want to be able to squat my body weight. It's not just an arbitrary kind of, I want to lose body fat. They're coming with much more interesting and more tangible goals, which is great, because that's what can really get someone hooked into that love for exercise beyond just using it as a vehicle for weight loss. The things that I would say, definitely, I would say that one of the most challenging things is particularly training women around the stage of the menopause, perimenopause and postmenopause. I would say that it's something that I've had to learn a lot about myself. Obviously, it's not something that I've personally experienced, but it's something that I think has really become a talking point now in a way that it just wasn't about 5-10 years ago, and I think that's amazing. And it's really been a learning journey for me to have to recognize the changes that women go through and how I can help facilitate an exercise program throughout that stage, being really mindful of the changes that they're going through mentally and physically. I think the menopause isn't just about the physical changes that happen. I think it's a big mental shift too. And so I always joke that my job as a personal trainer isn't just training people physically. It really is about being a sounding board for people's thoughts and feelings, and listening to them and being empathetic to their concerns. And I think definitely I would say that is one of the crucial times where I feel like I have to really step up my game and support women in a way that I probably wouldn't if they were 20 years younger. And I think the fact that more women of menopausal age are exercising is just so great. It's amazing to see women especially embrace strength training, which we know is so great for women of that age as well, maintaining bone density, staving off things like osteoporosis, and even just for their retention of muscle mass. Like it's a great form of exercise. So yeah, I would say that's definitely something that I've noticed to see more of, and I think it's brilliant.
If we look at women's body confidence over the ages, according to our Project Body Love research, the younger women have the worst body confidence. So it's the under 25s. Comparison is brought in as a reason, social media. Then it gets better in their late 20s, early 30s. Then it dips again around the pregnancy period. And then women in their 40s, who are the perimenopausal women, are the ones that really do have quite negative body confidence about themselves. For reasons that you've just gone into, they lose their confidence, they do start experience hormonal shifts, which can lead to physical and mental changes. But then it rises dramatically in their 50s. So there's something to look forward to.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to speak about that? Because that's something that you and I have worked in. If you feel comfortable talking about it, I think it would be great to hear your experience of going through that shift.
Yeah, so my body confidence journey is, in my 20s, I don't want to say an exercise addict to belittle that phrase, but I was definitely obsessed with exercise. And I was a pretty decent at triathlons and that type of thing, but I definitely was training to be smaller, which is the wrong reason to train, burn calories. And then in my 30s is when I started lifting weights, but it's also when I had both my children. So it's almost like any woman will know, the lost decade when it comes to your body, when you just sort of hand it over to either being pregnant or postnatal, etc. And then I met you in my late 30s. I'm 40, well, just about 43, just about to turn 43. And that's when I properly started lifting weights with you, isn't it? And I do love looking stronger. I'm now perimenopausal, so I take HRT, and my relationship with my body is definitely a process now. It's like some days I feel better than ever because I just feel proud of everything I've achieved and that I'm a very capable woman with 2 young children and a great job, and I can deadlift my own body weight. But then other days I do feel particularly negative about myself. But I think the situation that we've all found ourselves in is definitely a contributory factor to that.
Yeah.
Because I am identified by my job and being a manager and being around people. And when that's taken away from you, and I think that's happened to a lot of women this last year, you struggle to work out who you are and what you stand for. And I think that then manifests itself in low body image.
Yeah, and it's exactly like we were talking about before. When you start to have kind of worries and stresses in other areas of your life, chances are that stuff then comes out in negative body image talk with it, like internally and you know, out loud. And I think absolutely the last year, identity wise, you know, we've all been stripped of the things that make us who we are. You know, going to the gym for me was such a huge part of who I was. When that was taken away, it was like, oh my God, like that's such a big part of my enjoyment of life, is getting up, going and doing some exercise. And I think it's really been interesting to see how I had to reframe all of those things in my life, what exercise meant to me, even just, you know, food, being at home and having to suddenly make 3 meals a day, and I would be out and about and wouldn't have to give a second thought for that sort of stuff. I think it definitely has been a shift in identity, and something that I think a lot of people will definitely have struggled with. And I think it's really interesting to hear you, who a lot of people I think would look at and think, oh my God, she's got everything. She's got an amazing job, she's got a great house, kids, whatever, and think, oh, you mustn't have struggled this year. But even someone like yourself saying, you know, I really felt like I lost my identity, I think is really, really interesting.
So you mentioned nutrition there. Another thing that came up in our research is that if people consume processed sugar, alcohol, I'm not going to call it bad foods because I don't like calling food good or bad, but the less than healthy food, it affects their body confidence. Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I actually am someone who has a kind of a much better relationship with alcohol now, just to talk about that. But I think for me, definitely, it was one of those things where removing it from my lifestyle for a while was really helpful, particularly over lockdown. I think you and I have both discussed how we have quite addictive personalities. And I think if I start to lean on something a little bit too much, it can become that thing that I think you start to depend on. And I really didn't want that. So, you know, I basically haven't drunk for the whole of lockdown, and I really recognised that alcohol was such a big trigger for my anxiety that just to not have it at all made life so much easier. But yeah, especially with the food and stuff, I think, you know, I am someone who tries to encourage people into positive health behaviours. I don't put labels on what I do. I don't believe in encouraging diets or restrictive eating, but I think encouraging positive health behaviours is what makes all of us feel better. And it goes back to the stuff I said at the beginning, the simple stuff, you know, make sure you've got vegetables at every meal, make sure you drink enough water, make sure you're getting enough sleep. And I can absolutely understand how if some of those things start to slip, the worry is that you then slide into quite a dark place. And I can see how that will happen because it's a slippery slope. And, you know, I think that I've really had to do the work personally to make sure that I keep some of those positive health behaviours up over this year when it's been very easy to fall back into quite bad habits, knowing that if I keep them up, it's going to make me feel a hell of a lot better than if I don't. But I think it's always that tricky balancing act of knowing that those things make you feel better, but when you're feeling so low that they feel like they're the only things you want to lean on, sort of really trying hard not to fall back into those bad habits is difficult. So I can totally empathise with people who've struggled over the last year. I think as we sort of come into a much more, what feels like a more positive time, I would say just try to get back to that thinking about positive health behaviours. Maybe it's that you just have one goal each week. My goal this week is to walk 10,000 steps every day. My goal next week might be to drink drink, 2 litres of water every day. Just slowly trying to reintroduce those things can be a great way just to ease yourself back in, rather than ploughing the pressure on and thinking, oh my God, I need to achieve all of these things at once, which can be a lot of pressure for a lot of people and almost too much. And that's really how I would try and work it.
If I can tap into your personal trainer expertise, if somebody was trying to create the ideal workout week, what would it look like?
Such a hard question, because there's no... It would depend on so many different variables in terms of what someone's goals are. If someone's working towards a marathon, that's completely different to someone who just wants to train for enjoyment. But I would say there are definitely a few key non-negotiables that I would say should feature. I think rest days is one of them. What I worry about is a lot of people coming out of this year we've had and thinking they need to go hell for leather with their exercise, forgetting that rest is actually one of the most crucial parts of a training program. Our rest is actually when the body adapts and adjusts and is able to recover well in order to make those gains in whatever way you want, whether that's getting faster, whether that's lifting more weights. The rest is actually where our body does that. So not allowing enough time to rest and to progress is actually where a lot of people fall into trouble and can go into quite tricky places where they're particularly fatigued. They find that their immune function is being affected. So really having some respect for rest. There aren't binary amounts of rest days that I would put onto people. I would say that actually it's really about learning to tune into what your body is able to do. If you're someone who hasn't exercised much, I would say you're probably going to need a little bit more rest just to allow you to adjust. But at least one rest day a week is probably something that I would say is really key. Other things are, I am completely biased in this sense, but having some form of strength training within your program is for me one of the things that I would really try and encourage people to do. That could be body weight strength, it could be adding weights in, it could be, whatever that looks like to you. It could be using a rucksack at home to do some squats. It doesn't have to be anything complicated, but we know that strength training is so helpful towards, strengthening our supportive structure, making sure we're strong to do everything else in our lives, which actually does require quite a bit of strength, even from walking up the stairs to lifting up your child to carrying a heavy bag. It all requires strength. So having some form of strength training in there, resistance training, and then also just making sure that ultimately your form of training is something you enjoy. I want anyone who embraces what I do to enjoy it. I don't want them to feel as though they're, hating every second of it or they're obliged to be there. We know that the best form of training programs are the ones that people adhere to and the ones that people enjoy. So ultimately, that's got to be at the heart of what they're doing. So that could be, exercise is so varied in terms of what you could do, from Pilates, yoga, swimming, running, hiking, you name it. As long as you enjoy it and you're able to keep it up, then that's the perfect training program for you.
So let's go back to strength training. I hear it time and time again that women don't want to pick up weights because they fear they are going to bulk up, said with, quote marks around those words. Women look amazing when they're strong and powerful, but what is the can't get my words out.
Physiological.
Yes.
That's it for you.
That happens to women when they strength train, and are they going to get bigger if that's something that they don't want to do?
Yes, it's a great question and absolutely one that I get asked a lot. So first things first, women don't produce enough testosterone in order to elicit the same strength gains that you would see in a man. The other thing that I would say is it takes a long time to lay down even a small amount of muscle fibers. So for those women who come to me and they say, oh, I've been lifting weights for 2 weeks and I've bulked on my thighs, I go back to them and say, I really wish it took that long to bulk up muscle on my thighs. It just doesn't happen that way. It takes a long time to lay down new muscle fibers. It takes a specific type of training, progressive overload, enough intensity in order to elicit that change. It's just not possible to do that in a short time frame. If you look at, even myself, for example, I've been strength training for 6 years now. I definitely, hopefully, don't look bulky. And I would say that it's really about, if that was your goal, you would have to be eating in a large caloric surplus, be training at a really high intensity, and be doing it for a long time in order to bulk muscle. The second part is that why do a lot of women feel that they bulk muscle when they start to strength train? And that is because when we strength train, as you probably know, we make tiny micro tears in our muscle. That's what happens when we lift weights and we put the muscles under load. Tiny micro tears, as within a little scratch in your hand, draws blood towards the muscle in order to elicit repair. So we experience a small amount of inflammation, which can be that pump effect that you might see when a man's done loads of bicep curls and they come out of the gym feeling like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because all the blood has gone to that muscle to repair the muscle in order to make it stronger. And so that's what we typically see women worrying about, is that small amount of inflammation that they'll experience, particularly early on in their strength training journey, where the muscles are just adapting and adjusting to the new stimulus that you're putting upon it. So it's really not a permanent thing. In fact, it'll probably be gone within a couple of days. But it's something that women tend to panic about and go, oh my God, I think I've bulked muscle on my legs. It's nothing to worry about, and it will go. And the benefits of strength training are so far reaching that if it means that we have a tiny bit of inflammation in the first couple of weeks, it's nothing to worry about, and it should be something that you quickly overcome and you don't see again.
So in an ideal week, and I know there's no such thing as an ideal week, but how often should someone strength train?
I mean, I've got clients who do 2 days a week, and I've got clients who do 6 days a week. It totally depends on, again, goals and stuff. But I would say for someone who is your average person who wants to train just for the enjoyment of it and because they want to be physically strong, I would say no more than 3 days a week is necessary. Obviously you can do more if you want to, but 2 to 3 days of strength training of specific exercises that are you apply with a progressive overload, you do with good quality of movement, are going to be absolutely fine. And if you want to do that that means you can do that alongside other things. So I've got a lot of clients who would do 2 days of strength training because they love running and they want to do 3 runs a week. So they're going to do 2 days and then accompany that with 3 runs. It really does depend, but I would say to see some form of progression in terms of strength, 2 to 3 days is still enough.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be done in a gym. There's so many at-home training systems. You're about to bring out your own app.
Yes.
There's called Give Me Strength.
Yes.
And there's lots on YouTube. So people can do workouts in their home. They don't have to be a member of an expensive gym.
Yeah, and I think, isn't that the beauty of this year? Like, this is what has been so great, is just realizing that, yes, okay, the gym is a great place to train for a lot of people, but for some people it's just not where they want to go. They don't enjoy it. They don't want to pay money for a gym membership, whatever their reason is. And how great that we now have so many programs dedicated to home training, which is a lot more accessible for things like, if you think about mums, busy people who have jobs that just don't allow them to get to a gym, being able to do a great workout from home is brilliant. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't have to be in a gym to get a good workout in. And yes, I would love to say my app is coming out on the 1st of June, which is really exciting. So that is directly catered towards those who want to train at the gym and those who want to train from home. We have programs for both, and I really thought it was important to offer opportunities for both people to have structured programming in order to train from the gym if they want to, or from home if they want to.
Sounds exciting. Yes. Can't wait to get my free sign up. I'm hoping. Mums training at home. Mm-hmm. What came out in our Project Body Love research is that we are heavily influenced by our mums. You mentioned that you were brought up in a home where your mum was on a diet constantly, and subliminally that impacted you. And a lot of the research that we got back were women not nastily blaming their mum, but just matter of fact saying, I remember seeing my mother weighing herself the whole time. I remember my mother having shakes instead of meals the whole time. And I thought, well, if my mum doesn't think she's good enough, I don't think I'm good enough either. Now, there's been research that children who are brought up in homes where their mum exercise and they see their mum exercise are much more likely to be active themselves, both in childhood and as they go on in life. When you train mothers, what do you talk to them about, the messaging that they try to pass on to their children?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I would say I interact with this more on a social media level than I would with, with my fitness influencer hat on than I would as a personal trainer, because I think the mothers that I would train, I don't necessarily see it as much as my place to talk about to talk to them about how they would talk to their children. But definitely with my social media hat on, it's a conversation that I've had a lot with people who, particularly women, who have grown up with mothers who kind of grew up in the real diet heyday era, where, you know, women were discouraged from lifting weights, women were told that they had to be in a diet all the time. You know, it was I could name, you know, a million diets under the sun that I would see in magazines, and, you know, it was just quite a toxic space. And I know that you've worked really hard, particularly at Women's Health, to kind of bring women's health into a much more healthier space in terms of, you know, what you have on the cover, what you put in the magazine. But growing up, that just hadn't quite happened yet for my generation. And so you're absolutely right. We picked up on all of these subliminal messages from our parents, from the media, and it meant that, yeah, you do have this kind of strange relationship with your body and food that's heavily influenced by the stuff that you grew up around. So again, going back to saying, you know, thinking that you need to diet in order to be happy, that there was only one body ideal that we were all striving for. I can think of some hideous Kate Moss quotes that come to mind, but there was just a lot of toxic stuff going on. And so it's very easy to see why women then have this really negative relationship with their body. But I think that, you know, we are definitely seeing a shift. I've heard amazing accounts from women who I've spoken to and interacted with online, who are really changing the way that they talk about health and their bodies and the way that they, you know, choose to live their lives with their children. And I think that is an amazing progression to see, is that people are really learning that language is so important. The conversations that you have with children, no matter how young, are impactful, and your words have weight. And saying those kind of negative things, talking about the way that you look, even having a big focus on body image can really be damaging for children. And so it's great to hear that you guys are highlighting it in the magazine. I think the more that we can encourage and maybe help people to talk about this stuff in a more positive way. It's not saying that you're not going to talk about health at all, because I think there are some things that we can do positively with kids. As you said, you know, talking about the positive benefits of exercise, great. Like, that's definitely something that I want to talk to my kids about and get involved with in a fun way. But that the focus not be on, oh, I'm doing this because I need to lose weight, but that it be on, I'm doing this because I want to be strong. I'm doing this because, you know, you've spoken a lot about how you talk to Nell, and it would be great to, you know, to hear some of your experience of that, because I think, you know, I can talk about it from my experience of who I talk to, but I'm not a mother. So, you know, in your experience, have you found that even the conversations with your daughter, are they changing, and are you thinking about the way you talk to her?
Oh, I definitely think about the way I speak to her. So my daughter Nell is 5, as you know. She is a mini me in every way. She's stubborn, bloody-minded, stroppy, sassy, all my best qualities. but she also looks like me.
Yeah.
Like I did at that age. We could be twins. And much like I was, she's much taller than her friends, and she's bigger built than her friends. She's, you know, a lot of her friends in her class, she's only in reception, are very small, petite girls, and she's not. So, and I remember being very self-conscious of that when I was younger. I remember even at the age of 5, telling my mother she was to ring the school to tell them they were not to weigh me in a maths class, because I'd read ahead in the maths textbook, and it was all about learning stones and pounds and kilos and stuff. So I was very aware of it even at that age. So the things that I do at home is that I don't have a weighing scales. I tend not to weigh myself, to be honest, because it triggers me, so I don't have a weighing scales. I tell Nell constantly how strong she is and how beautiful she is. Now, I know there is some thinking that you shouldn't refer to a child's appearance at all. However, I know from experience that I could have done with being told I was pretty when I was younger, when I was going through all that. Oh, I'm bigger than my friends. So I tell her all the time how funny she is, how clever she is, how strong she is. But children, pointing out other children's appearances starts young, because we were at a barbecue last year, and Nell came up to me and really quite upset and whispered in my ear that a little boy called her fat, and it broke my heart. But I said, you go and tell him that you are big and strong like your mummy. And off she went, and she told this little boy that she was. But I need to equip her with the armour to deal with that, because children can be quite mean or have no filter rather than be mean. I think Nell is growing up in a far more balanced environment than I ever did, and this is no fault to my mother at all, but it was the 80s, it was the South Wales valleys, we were not the most demonstrative family, physically or emotionally. It was kind of, you know, kids were sort of, the front door was open and you were kicked out for the day, you know.
But we are a product of our environment.
Yes.
And so it's about acknowledging that and I guess recognising in your own home that that's not something that you want to repeat.
It's even the imagery that I want Nell exposed to. I remember watching Baywatch. You might not have ever seen Baywatch. I remember watching Baywatch. Oh no, it come on about 5 o'clock on a Saturday and I was allowed to watch it, but I just remember feeling so awful about myself watching these enhanced women running around a beach in LA, you know, I'm thinking, I don't look like that, I'm never going to look like that. So I'm very mindful of what I allow Nell to watch. That said, I do think even the imagery in the Netflix like teen dramas and all that are on now, there's one called Free Reign. Any mum here with a daughter will know Free Reign. But I do think there's a more broad representation of female bodies out there, and I think that will help enormously.
And is that something that you've also tried to reflect in your own work, I'm guessing, with the magazine, you know?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So we've changed up the diversity of our cover stars and inside the mag, because I truly believe well looks different on everybody. I've said it before, I'm nearly 43. I'm curvy, strong, I have a different body shape to your typical, you know, fitness influencer. But I know that I'm one of the fittest people in the room. So, and that's why I prove that well looks different on everybody.
Yeah,
so we've
absolutely.
definitely mixed up the representation of women in terms of age and body shape. It has to be healthy. I think there's, you know, there's parameters in which we have to operate, and but I want women to be healthy, because I believe that if you are the healthiest version of yourselves, you are better at life, you are better mother, better partner, better manager, employee, if you are feeling healthy and mentally well.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say, was you've also reframed, I guess, the concept of health in terms of how you address it in the magazine, that you don't just look at physical health at all. You really cover a whole broad spectrum of what health means and how it looks different to different people. I think one of yours campaigns is your Strong Mind campaign, and I think that's brilliant that you really shine a light on mental health just as much as you do the physical.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you've mentioned here, it's what goes on in here dictates how we feel about this and about our body image. It all starts in your head. I exercise for my mental health more than anything. I know most people do these days. You know, that's a shift that I've seen in the last year, actually. People realising the importance of exercise and nutrition for their mental health. And when you are feeling mentally well, you will feel better about yourself, you will feel more positive, more capable and more able to take on the world.
Absolutely.
If you could say one thing to the Alice in your late teens, early 20s, what would it be?
I think it's really important to say, and this will always be my piece of advice, making yourself smaller will not make you happier. You know, my number one goal was to look the part when I was that age. I wanted to be that skinny, you know, I had the six pack and everything, and I genuinely thought that was what I wanted. And in reality, it just didn't fill the void that I thought it was going to. And I think that can be said for lots of different things, you know. It's fine to change your external appearance. Sometimes it does make people happier, but you've got to understand that it might not always do that. That really what's going on inside is the most important thing. Get that in a good place first, and then you might say, okay, I think doing this might make me feel better. And really, yeah, I think that would be the piece of advice I'd give myself.
Much like the conversation around body image has become much more lively and a point of conversation, the conversation around body hair is something that on social media everyone has an opinion. Now, you choose to remove your unwanted body hair. Why did you make that decision?
Well, really, mine was actually from more of a perspective of healthy skin. So I have suffered with eczema for as long as I can remember. I get flare-ups dependent on stress, sleep, sometimes what I eat. And I was finding that shaving, which I was previously doing to remove my body hair, was particularly irritating to those areas. So I would find that underneath my armpits, I would get really, really painful kind of eczema patches. It would wake me up in the night. It would be, you know, really kind of like uncomfortable. And I actually bought the Philips Lumia when I heard about it and thought that seems like something that I think I should try. And I remember even after a few sessions, my shaving went down to like having to do it once a week. And the irritation to my skin was so much less, to a point that now I don't have to use a razor at all. And I have zero eczema at all in any of those areas. So I really noticed that from an eczema perspective, for me, it was one of the best things I could do. And that constant irritation of shaving was just really not good for me. But I think why I choose to remove it is completely personal. I think, you know, we've said it a number of times here that every woman should have a choice to do what she wants to do for her body. And for some people that will look like X, and for some people that will look like Y. For me, I personally feel more confident. I feel happy without body hair. And I'm totally comfortable with women who choose not to remove their body hair. But yeah, I was someone who previously did shave and then really thought that I needed something, one, that was slightly more permanent in terms of hair removal, but also that was less irritating to my skin. What do you do?
So I've removed mine as well for similar reasons, ingrowing hairs, which can...
Yeah, nightmare.
You know, and they're painful, but they don't look attractive. No. And we all want to feel our best. And for me, removing my body hair contributes to me having more confidence and feeling my best. And laser hair removal, as you say, is just more long-lasting and kinder to the skin than shaving.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to take your razor into the shower every morning.
Or remember it when you go on holiday, all those awkward things, you know, it is amazing. I think as well, yeah, I mean, it's such a wider conversation as well around, you know, what we choose to do for our bodies is something that, you know, should be completely independent of what anyone else thinks. Yeah. And I think we've become so, you know, with social media and all these things, become so obsessed about having to comment on what everyone else does for themselves. And I'm kind of just at the point where I'm like, you know, I'm just happy to do what works best for me, and I don't care what anyone else does. I'm just going to do what works best for me, and that was why I chose to do it.
There's too much conversation on social media about everything, isn't it? And
everyone's got an opinion.
Yes, they do. When really we should all realise that our bodies are the least interesting thing about us.
Exactly that. I mean, I heard someone say that actually. There was someone on the news the other day, and they said that, and my boyfriend actually picked it up and said that's such a good point to say, is that, you know, when you meet someone, their body is probably the least interesting thing that you recognise about them. You know, you might recognise their smile or, you know, something interesting that they say. And yet we devote so much energy to thinking about our bodies. And it's just, yeah, it's sad. And I hope that we're slowly doing things to change that.
Well, Alice, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute joy. And it's so lovely to see your beautiful smiley face. I do miss you. Alice and I used to train together at the gym, and I've missed not doing it.
We'll be back soon,
so
though. We'll be back soon.
We're all back in our offices and all that.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Project Body Love with Women's Health in association with Philips. Take a look around the Project Body Love site for more virtual events to learn about how to feel more confident in yourself, encouraging a positive mindset and putting an end to negative self-talk. Thank you for joining us.